I'm Kayla Preston, 26, and literally last weekend my role as the family provider, yeah, it totally backfired. The piece I'd worked my butt off to keep solid for years, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown at our so-called family dinner. My father, Thomas, straight up demanded I hand over 80% of my savings I'd never even told them about, for my brother Rael's latest whim, and when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You're selfish, Kayla," Dad yelled, with Rael smirking like he'd already won. But here's the tea. Their words didn't break me. They lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying moment of freedom you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost unreal what I did once that decision hit. The air in our cramped dining room felt heavier than usual that evening, the kind of heavy that presses into your chest and makes your breaths shallow. I sat at the wobbly oak table, the same one I'd saved from a garage sale when I was 19, back when I thought fixing things could fix us. The tablecloth was new, though, a crisp white one I'd bought to make this dinner feel less like a battlefield. Spoiler, it didn't help. Dad was at the head, his fingers drumming on the armrest of his chair, a rhythm I'd learned meant he was about to say something I wouldn't like. Rael slouched across from me, scrolling on his phone, not even pretending to care about the spread of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes I'd spent hours preparing. This was my life. Cooking, working, saving, all to keep the three of us afloat since Mom left when I was 15. I was the glue, the bank, the maid, whatever they needed, I became. But that night, something shifted. Dad's drumming stopped, and he leaned forward, his graying beard catching the dim light from the chandelier. "Kayla," he said, his voice low and deliberate, like he was announcing a verdict, "we need to talk about Rael's future." My stomach twisted. Rael didn't look up, but his lips twitched into a faint, entitled grin. I knew that look. It was the same one he had when I paid off his car loan last year, or when I covered his rent after he forgot to apply for jobs. I set my fork down, the metal clinking against the plate louder than I meant. "What about it?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral, though my heart was already racing. Dad didn't meet my eyes. He never did when he wanted something big. "Rael's got a chance to start a business," he said. "A real opportunity. He needs capital. Your savings, Kayla. 80% should do it." My jaw tightened and I felt the heat creeping up my neck. 80%. My savings. The money I'd scraped together from double shifts at the diner, from skipping lunches to pocket the cash, from every overtime hour I could beg for. They didn't even know how much I had because I'd never told them. I'd learned early to keep things like that close, to hide the little pieces of myself they'd take if they could. 80%? I repeated, my voice quieter than I felt. Rael finally looked up, his brown eyes narrowing like I'd insulted him just by questioning it. "Yeah, Kayla," he said, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. "It's not like you're doing anything with it, you just hoard it." Hoard it. The word stung like a slap. I wanted to scream that I'd been saving for a life. My life, not his. A life where I wasn't just the one who paid the bills, who cleaned up their messes, who existed to serve, but I didn't scream. I sat there, my fingers curling into my palms under the table, nails biting into skin. Dad chimed in, his voice sharper now. "You've always been the responsible one, Kayla. This is what family does. We support each other." Support. The irony burned. Where was the support when I dropped out of college to work full-time? When I cried myself to sleep after Mom left, and Dad told me to get over it? When Rael crashed the car I bought him, and I was the one who paid for the repairs? I looked at Dad, searching for a flicker of guilt, but his eyes were fixed on the table, like he was already counting my money in his hand. I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the linoleum floor cutting through the silence. "I need some air," I said, standing before they could argue. Rael snorted, muttering something about me being dramatic, but I didn't care. I walked to the back door, my hands shaking as I gripped the handle. Outside, the night was cool, the stars sharp against the dark. I stood on the porch, breathing deep, and that's when it hit me. Not anger, not sadness, but a quiet, unshakable certainty. I wasn't going back to that table. Not to that life. I'd been their convenience for too long, and I was done. As I leaned against the porch railing, the cool night air brushing my face, my mind drifted back. pulling me into memories I'd tried so hard to bury. It wasn't the first time I'd felt this invisible weight, but standing there, with Dad's demands still echoing in my ears, it all came rushing forward like a flood I couldn't hold back. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was 16 again, the day after Mom left. The house was a mess, dishes piled in the sink, laundry spilling from the hamper, and Dad was slumped on the couch staring at the TV like it held all the answers. Rael, only 12 then, was whining about being hungry, kicking his feet against the coffee table. I remember rolling up my sleeves, starting with the dishes, the hot water scalding my hands as I scrubbed. By evening I'd cooked spaghetti from what was left in the pantry, set the table, and even coaxed Dad to eat. "Thanks, Kayla," he muttered, not looking up. Rael shoveled it in without a word. That was my first real achievement, keeping us from falling apart. But no one celebrated it. No pat on the back, no good job. It just became expected, like breathing. I shifted my weight on the porch, my fingers gripping the wood tighter as another memory surfaced. I was 18, graduating high school with honors. I'd studied late nights after shifts at the local grocery store, my eyes burning from the fluorescent lights. The ceremony was in the gym, folding chairs squeaking under proud parents. I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, heart pounding with a mix of pride and exhaustion. Dad and Rael were there, Dad clapping half-heartedly, Rael fidgeting with his phone. Afterward, in the parking lot, Dad ruffled Rael's hair and said, "Your turn soon, buddy. You'll do even better." Rael grinned, and they talked about his middle school soccer trophy the whole drive home. My diploma? It ended up on the fridge for a week before falling behind it. I picked it up, dusted it off, and tucked it in my drawer. No dinner out, no congratulations card. Just me, alone in my room, whispering to myself that it mattered. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the backyard tree, and I hugged my arms around myself, feeling the chill seep in. Flashbacks kept coming, each one sharper. At 20 I got my first promotion at the diner, from waitress to shift manager. It meant more money, which I funneled straight into the house, paying the electric bill that Dad had forgotten, buying Rael new sneakers because his were too old. I came home buzzing, ready to share. "Guess what?" I said at dinner, my voice brighter than usual. Dad glanced up from his plate. "What?" "I got promoted, more hours, better pay." He nodded, chewing slowly. "Good, we could use that." Rael snorted. "Cool, I guess. Hey Dad, can I get that new game console? Everyone has it." And just like that, the conversation shifted. Dad promised to look into it, and my promotion faded into nothing. I sat there poking at my food, the excitement draining away. Later, when Rael did get that console, with my money, of course, they spent the evening playing, laughing together. I watched from the doorway, invisible again. My breath came out in a shaky sigh, and I paced the porch now, my sneakers soft against the worn boards. Why did it always go like that? Another memory hit. Rael's 16th birthday. I'd saved for months to buy him a used bike, knowing he wanted one for getting around. I wrapped it in newspaper because we couldn't afford fancy paper, parked it in the garage with a bow I made from string. At the party, just us three with a cake I baked, Dad handed him an envelope. "For driving lessons," he said gruffly. Rael whooped, hugging Dad. "The bike?" He glanced at it, said, "Thanks, sis," and left it gathering dust. Weeks later he complained it was lame, and Dad suggested I sell it to fund his lessons. I did, swallowing the hurt, adding the cash to the pot. My efforts were always the backdrop, never the spotlight. I stopped pacing, leaning my forehead against a post, the rough wood grounding me. It wasn't just the big moments, it was the little ones that piled up like stones in my chest. Like when I fixed the leaky roof at 22, climbing up there myself with tar and shingles I bought on credit, my hands blistered and black by the end. Dad walked by as I came down the ladder, sweaty and triumphant. "Roof's done," I said, wiping my brow. He grunted. "About time," and went inside. But when Rael mowed the lawn once, badly, leaving patches, he got a "good job, son," and $20. Or, the time I nursed Dad through the flu, staying up nights with soup and meds, missing work. He recovered and thanked Rael for checking in via text. Rael, who hadn't lifted a finger. Tears pricked my eyes now, hot and unwanted. I'd tell myself it was fine, that family meant sacrifice. But deep down I knew it was lopsided. Rael's achievements, passing a class he almost failed, getting a part-time job he quit after a month, were met with praise, high fives, even small gifts. "That's my boy," Dad would say, his face lighting up in a way it never did for me. And me? I was the reliable one, the invisible engine keeping everything running. No fanfare, just more expectations. Like clockwork, they'd take and I'd give, thinking one day it'd balance out. But standing there on the porch, the memories swirling like ghosts, I realized it never would. This wasn't family. It was a habit I'd fallen into. A role I'd been shoved into since Mom walked out. She'd called once, years ago, pleading to come back, but Dad shut her down, and I stayed silent, too busy holding things together. Now, with Dad's latest demand fresh, it all clicked into a painful clarity. My sacrifices weren't ignored by accident, they were expected, entitlement wrapped in blood ties. Rael's smirk, Dad's averted eyes, they saw me as a resource, not a person. The thought settled heavy, but also freeing. I wiped my eyes, straightening up. The house light spilled out, casting long shadows. I could go back in, cave like always, or not. The door behind me creaked open just a fraction, and I heard Dad's voice calling out, gruff and impatient. "Kayla? You coming back in or what? Dinner's getting cold." I didn't turn around. My hand stayed on the porch post, fingers tracing the splintered edges as if they could anchor me. Inside, the clatter of plates told me Rael was probably helping himself to seconds, oblivious as ever. But out here in the quiet, my mind wasn't on them anymore. It was on the secret I'd been guarding like a fragile flame. The savings account I'd built in the shadows, dollar by dollar, over years of quiet rebellion. That aha moment? It hit me like a thunderclap one rainy afternoon 2 years ago, when I was 24, sitting alone in the break room at the diner after a brutal double shift. The rain had been pounding the windows all day, turning the world outside into a blurry gray mess. My feet ached from running tables, my apron stained with coffee spills and ketchup smears. I'd just clocked out, collapsing into a plastic chair with my phone in hand, checking the bank app like I did every payday. The balance stared back. $1,200. Not much, but it was mine, scraped from tips, overtime, even selling old clothes online. I remember rubbing my temples, exhaustion settling in my bones, when my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Need $500 for Rael's tuition fee. Transfer it." Tuition? Rael had dropped out of community college months ago, blowing the money on parties. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the transfer button, heart sinking. How many times had I done this? Covered for them, only to watch it vanish? That's when it snapped. I set the phone down, hands trembling slightly as I gripped the edge of the table. My reflection in the rain-streaked window looked back, tired eyes, messy ponytail, a face that had forgotten how to smile for itself. "No," I whispered to myself, the word foreign on my lips. "No more." In that moment, clarity washed over me like the storm outside. I'd been pouring myself into a bottomless pit, thinking it was love, but it was just survival for them. What if I saved for me? For a way out? The idea ignited something deep, a spark of self-preservation I'd long ignored. I stood up, legs shaky, and instead of transferring the money, I logged into the app and moved $200 into a new savings account I'd opened on a whim weeks before. It was hidden, linked only to my email, no joint access. My fingers flew across the screen, setting up automatic transfers. Small ones, $50 here, $100 there. So they wouldn't notice the dip in what I gave them. From there, the struggle began, intense and grinding, every day a battle against guilt and fatigue. I leaned against the break room wall that day, breathing hard, as if I'd just run a marathon. Guilt clawed at me immediately, Dad's voice in my head, calling me selfish. But I pushed it down, pocketing my phone and heading home in the rain, umbrella forgotten. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced. What if they found out? What if an emergency hit and I needed to dip in? I tossed, sheets tangling around my legs, staring at the ceiling cracks I'd memorized. To cope, I started small rituals. Every payday, I'd sit at my desk in my tiny room, the lamp casting a warm glow, and log in. Watching the balance tick up, $1,500, $2,000 became my secret thrill. But it hurt. Skipping coffee runs with coworkers, my stomach growling through shifts. Wearing the same worn sneakers until the soles thinned, ignoring the blisters. Micro moments built the fortress. Like the time I worked an extra shift on my birthday, 25 now, the diner buzzing with evening crowds. My arms burned from carrying trays, sweat trickling down my back. A table left a $20 tip, generous, and instead of treating myself to cake, I transferred it straight to savings. Back home, Dad and Rael were watching TV, a half-eaten pizza on the table. "Happy birthday," Dad mumbled, not looking away from the screen. Rael tossed me a nod. I forced a smile, slipping to my room where I added the deposit. The balance hit $5,000. I sat on the bed, knees drawn up, hugging them as quiet pride swelled, but tears came too, hot, silent, mixing with the ache of another year unseen. The struggle deepened in winter when bills spiked. Dad's heating repair emergency meant I handed over more from my checking, leaving savings untouched. I remember huddling under blankets, thermostat low to save, my breath visible in the cold air. Fingers numb, I'd check the app on my phone, the growing number a lifeline, $8,000. It fueled me through nights when doubt crept in. One evening after a fight where Rael accused me of being stingy for not buying him new headphones, I locked myself in the bathroom, sink running to mask my sobs. Staring in the mirror red-eyed, I whispered affirmations I'd read online. "You deserve this. This is your future." It felt cheesy, but it worked. I dried my face, splashed water, and emerged like nothing happened. Months blurred into a rhythm of endurance. I took on side gigs, dog walking on weekends, my legs weary from miles, pockets fuller. Each deposit was a victory. $10,000, then $15,000. The aha evolved into resolve, but the intensity never faded. Like the day I almost broke, finding Dad's note on the fridge, "Groceries low, handle it." I crumpled it, fist clenching, nails digging into palm. Instead of raging, I shopped sparingly, transferring the saved grocery money to my account. Balance, $20,000. It was massive now, hidden success blooming in secrecy. No one knew, not coworkers, not the few friends I had. It was mine, a quiet empire built on skipped meals, sore muscles, stolen moments. By last year, the struggle peaked with a health scare. Exhaustion hit hard. I fainted at work, waking to concerned faces. Doctor said anemia, stress. Lying in bed recovering, supplements in hand, I checked the app. $25,000. It was enough. Enough for a deposit on an apartment, for breathing room. The realization settled warm in my chest, pushing back the fear. I'd done it. Through every clenched jaw, every avoided eye contact with my reflection, every internal battle where guilt screamed, family first. But I was family too. My family. Back on the porch now, the memories fading as the night deepened. That secret felt like armor. Dad called again, voice sharper. "Kayla!" I straightened, hand dropping from the post. The savings weren't just money, they were proof I could build something for me. And tonight, with their demand hanging heavy, it was time to use it. Not for them, but to walk away. My resolve hardened there on the porch, the night wrapping around me like a cloak, but the pull of the house, of habit, tugged at me still. I couldn't just vanish into the dark, not yet. The confrontation wasn't over, and as I stared at the backyard fence, weathered and leaning like our family bonds, my thoughts slipped back to how this evening had begun, just hours ago, when the weight of my secret savings felt like both a burden and a beacon. It was late afternoon, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows through the kitchen window as I stood at the counter, hands buried in a bowl of potato mash. The potatoes were soft, yielding under my fork, steam rising in lazy curls that fogged the glass. I'd checked my phone one last time before starting dinner, logged into the app, the balance glowing, $30,000. It was the critical mark. The amount I'd calculated months ago would cover first and last month's rent on a small apartment downtown, plus a buffer for furniture, groceries, maybe even a cheap car. My fingers had hovered over the screen, heart thumping steadily, not with fear anymore, but with a quiet anticipation. This was it. Enough to break free, to step into a life where I wasn't tethered to their needs. I set the phone down carefully on the counter, screen down as if hiding it from myself. The kitchen smelled of garlic and herbs, the chicken roasting in the oven with a sizzle that usually comforted me. But today, each sound grated, amplifying the tension coiling in my gut. I knew this dinner wasn't just routine. It carried an undercurrent, a sense that something would snap. Dad had mentioned talking about Rael's future that morning over coffee, his eyes avoiding mine as he stirred his mug, spoon clinking against the ceramic. "Family meeting tonight?" he'd said gruffly, and Rael had nodded from the couch, feet up on the coffee table, crumbs from his breakfast scattering. I hadn't pressed, I never did. Instead I'd nodded back, murmuring, Okay, while inside my mind raced to the savings, wondering if tonight would force my hand. As I peeled carrots now, the knife slicing through with rhythmic thuds, my movements were deliberate, almost mechanical. Peel, chop, drop into the pot. Each action a small anchor keeping me from drifting into panic. My hands, calloused from years at the diner, trembled slightly on the handle, and I paused, gripping the edge of the sink. Water ran cold over my fingers, shocking me back. What if they asked for money again? What if it was big this time? The thought made my chest tighten, breath shallow. I glanced at the clock. 5:30 p.m. Dad would be home soon from his part-time gig at the warehouse, Rael from whatever errands he ran that never led to a job. This dinner was dreaded, not annual like some formal affair, but weekly enough to feel like a ritual of obligation. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, the fabric rough against my skin, and moved to set the table. Plates clattered softly as I placed them, forks and knives aligned just so, a habit from waitressing that made things feel controlled. The oven timer buzzed, jolting me, and I pulled out the chicken, golden and bubbling, juices pooling. I prodded it with a fork, steam wafting up, carrying the scent that should have made my mouth water but only turned my stomach. Reluctance settled heavier now. I didn't want this meal, this gathering where I'd play the provider yet again. But walking away mid-prep? That wasn't me, not yet. I stirred the mashed potatoes, adding butter that melted slowly, swirling in creamy trails. My mind wandered to the apartment listings I'd browsed secretly last night, curled in bed with my phone dimmed. One caught my eye, a one-bedroom with a tiny balcony, rent $900 a month. With my savings I could sign a lease tomorrow. The idea sent a thrill through me, fingers tightening on the spoon. But then guilt crept in, uninvited. Dad's tired shoulders, Rael's aimless youth. I shook it off, scraping the bowl harder, the metal screeching faintly. Footsteps on the front porch pulled me back, Dad's heavy boots unmistakable. The door swung open, bringing a draft of cool air. "Smells good," he grunted, hanging his jacket on the hook, not meeting my eyes. He shuffled to the fridge, grabbing a beer, the cap popping with a hiss. I nodded, forcing a "thanks," as I transferred the carrots to a bowl, steam clouding my vision. Rael burst in minutes later, slamming the door, phone in hand. "Hey," he said, sniffing the air. "Chicken again?" No hello, no offer to help. He plopped at the table, scrolling, chair creaking under him. I bit my lip, carrying dishes over, placing them with careful thuds. The table was set now, white cloth crisp, but under it, my legs felt unsteady as I sat for a moment, waiting. Internally, the realization built like a storm. This was the verge, the savings weren't just numbers, they were my exit. As Dad cracked his beer, foam spilling slightly over his hand, he wiped it on his pants, as glancing at me. "We eating soon?" I stood, smoothing my apron, the fabric bunching under my fingers. Yeah, almost. But inside the weight pressed, impending change, the confrontation I sensed coming. I'd prepared the meal, but not for what followed. My hand brushed my pocket, feeling the phone's outline, the app holding my future. Reluctantly I called them to eat, voice steady despite the churn. This tense evening at home, pots still simmering, was the calm before the demand, before the breaking point. As we sat, forks scraping, I felt it looming, my resolve quietly firming. But now, back on the porch after the blow-up, that preparation felt like a distant echo, the food cold inside, my decision crystallizing in the night air. I took one last deep breath on the porch, the cool air filling my lungs like a final fortification, before turning toward the door. My hand hesitated on the knob, fingers curling around the cold metal, twisting slowly as if delaying the inevitable. The hinge creaked softly as I pushed it open, stepping back into the warmth of the house that suddenly felt stifling. The kitchen light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the dining table, where Dad and Rael still sat, plates half-eaten, the chicken congealing in its juices. Dad's fork paused mid-air, his eyes flicking up to me with that mix of irritation and expectation. Rael didn't even glance my way, shoveling a bite into his mouth, chewing loudly. I closed the door behind me with a quiet click, my sneakers squeaking faintly on the linoleum as I walked back to my chair. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle, and I could feel their gazes settling on me like weights. I pulled out my chair, the legs scraping against the floor in a low grind that echoed my reluctance. As I sat, smoothing the napkin in my lap, a pointless habit to steady my hands, Dad cleared his throat, setting his fork down with a deliberate click. "So, you done with your little tantrum?" he asked, his voice laced with that condescending edge he'd perfected over the years, the one that made questions sound like accusations. His beard twitched slightly as he spoke, and he leaned back in his chair, arms crossing over his chest, the fabric of his shirt straining. I met his eyes for a second, then looked down at my plate, pushing a piece of carrot around with my fork, the tines scraping porcelain. "It wasn't a tantrum," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. Inside, my heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral, fingers gripping the fork tighter. Rael snorted, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, leaving a smear on his sleeve. "Come on, Kayla, don't be dramatic, it's just money, you've got plenty stashed away, right?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his eyes narrowing with that entitled glint, like he was appraising something that was already his. The way he said just money twisted in my gut, as if the endless shifts, the skipped meals, the bone-deep fatigue were nothing. I felt my jaw clench, teeth grinding subtly, but I didn't snap back. Instead, I took a small bite of mashed potatoes, the food tasteless now, sticking in my throat as I swallowed. Dad jumped in, his hand gesturing vaguely toward me, palm up like he was offering wisdom. "Your brother's right, family helps family. You've always been good at saving, better than me or him. It's a compliment, really." A backhanded one, wrapped in praise that stung. His lips curved into a half-smile, but his eyes stayed hard, avoiding direct contact, flicking to the window instead. I set my fork down carefully, the metal tapping lightly, buying time as I folded my hands in my lap, nails digging into my palms. "A compliment?" I echoed, keeping my tone even, though heat rose in my cheeks. Rael rolled his eyes, slouching deeper into his chair, one foot tapping impatiently under the table. I could feel the vibration through the floor. "Yeah, like, you're the smart one with cash. I'm the ideas guy. This business thing? It's gonna be huge. You wouldn't get it." He waved his hand dismissively, as if my life of scraping by was too mundane to understand ambition. The condescension dripped from his words, and I felt it like a slow drip on my forehead, wearing me down. Dad nodded along, his fingers drumming on the table again, a rhythmic thud that matched my pulsing temples. "Exactly. Rael's got vision. You've got stability. Use it to help him out. 80% ain't much in the grand scheme." "Not much." The words echoed, and I stared at my plate, tracing the pattern of gravy with my eyes, willing myself not to explode. My foot shifted under the table, toe pressing into the floor as if rooting myself. "And what about my vision?" I asked, voice low, looking up now. Dad's drumming stopped, his brow furrowing slightly, like the question confused him. He shifted in his seat, chair creaking, and rubbed his beard thoughtfully. "Your vision, Kayla. Be real. You're the one who keeps things running. That's your thing. Compliment, like I said." Another backhand, disguised as flattery. Rael chuckled, a short bark that made me flinch inwardly. "Yeah, sis, don't rock the boat now. We've got a good setup." Good for them, maybe. I felt my shoulders tense, muscles knotting, but I breathed through it, picking up my water glass, the cool condensation slick against my fingers as I took a sip. The barrage kept coming, subtle jabs piling up like stones. Dad forked a piece of chicken, chewing slowly before adding, "Remember when you fixed that roof? Practical stuff. Rael's not built for that. He's creative. Creative. Like crashing cars and quitting jobs was art." Rael grinned, pointing his fork at me. "Totally. You'd hate starting a business, too risky for you. Stick to what you're good at." His tone was light, almost teasing, but the undertone cut deep, dismissing my dreams before I could voice them. I set the glass down harder than intended, the bass thumping softly, water sloshing. My free hand curled into a fist under the table, knuckles whitening, patience frayed with each word, testing limits I'd stretched thin for years. They didn't stop. Dad leaned in, eyes finally meeting mine, but with pity now. "Look, we're not saying you're not important. You're the backbone, but backbone support, they don't lead." Backbone. The word twisted, and I felt a flush creep up my neck. Ears burning. Rael nodded vigorously, mouthful. "Exactly. Hand over the cash, and we'll all win." All win. My vision blurred slightly, not from tears, but from the sheer weight of their contempt, wrapped in these compliments that belittled everything I'd built. I pushed my chair back an inch, the scrape minimal, but enough to signal my edge. The room felt smaller, their words pressing in, but beneath it, my resolve from the porch simmered, waiting. As the questions turned more probing, "How much you got saved, anyway?" from Dad, his fork gesturing like a pointer. I deflected quietly. "Enough," my voice clipped, fingers tracing the table edge. Rael's foot tapped faster, impatience showing. The gauntlet wore on, each remark a test, pushing me closer to the breaking point I'd glimpsed outside. The questions hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking, as Dad's fork hovered near his plate again, his eyes narrowing on me with that probing stare. I shifted in my chair, the wood creaking under me, my fingers still tracing the table's edge in slow, deliberate circles to keep from balling into fists. The room seemed to shrink further, the walls pressing in with the weight of their expectations, and I could hear the faint tick of the clock in the kitchen, each second amplifying the silence between bites. Rael's tapping foot had slowed, but his gaze flicked to Dad, expectant like a dog waiting for a command. Dad set his fork down once more, the clink sharp this time, and leaned forward, elbows planting firmly on the table, making the cloth bunch slightly under his arms. "Enough dodging, Kayla," he said, his voice dropping to that authoritative tone he used when decisions were final, no room for debate. "How much is in that savings of yours? We need details if we're going to make this work for Rael." My throat tightened, a lump forming as I swallowed, the water I'd sipped earlier doing nothing to ease it. I glanced at my plate, the food now a cold, unappetizing mess, gravy congealing into lumps. "It's my savings," I managed, voice low but firm, my eyes lifting to meet his. But he didn't flinch. Instead, his jaw set, beard bristling as he exhaled through his nose, a slow, frustrated sound. Rael straightened a bit, setting his phone face down with a soft thud, his fingers drumming lightly on the back of it now, mirroring Dad's earlier habit. "Come on, sis," he chimed in, his tone wheedling like he was coaxing a child. "Don't make this hard, just spit it out. We've always shared, right?" Shared. The word twisted in my mind, bitter. Me sharing, them taking. My hand dropped from the table to my lap, nails pressing into my thigh through my jeans, the pinch grounding me as heat flushed my face. Dad waved a hand dismissively, cutting off any response I might have formed, his palm slicing the air like a judge's gavel. "Look, I've thought this through. Rael's business idea, it's solid. Auto detailing shop. He's got the passion for cars. Passion. Like the one that led to him totaling the last one I helped buy." Dad's eyes bored into mine now, no avoidance, just cold calculation. "You hand over 80%. That's fair. Leaves you with 20 to play with. Groceries, bills, whatever. We're family, this is how we invest in each other." Invest. My stomach churned and I felt my breath hitch, shallow and quick. 80%, my escape fund, quantified and demanded like it was communal property. I opened my mouth but the words stuck, my tongue heavy. Rael nodded eagerly, leaning in, his chair scraping forward an inch. "Yeah, exactly. I'll pay you back once it takes off. Promise." His smile was wide, teeth flashing, but his eyes stayed sharp, assessing. I shook my head slowly, the motion small at first, building as the refusal solidified inside me. "No," I said, clearer now, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Dad's eyebrows shot up, surprise flickering before hardening into anger, his fists clenching on the table, knuckles whitening against the cloth. "No? What do you mean, no?" He pushed back from the table slightly, chair legs grinding, his face reddening. "You've been squirreling away that money under my roof. Eating my food. Your food? The groceries I bought, the bills I paid. But I didn't interrupt, I let him build, my own resolve mirroring his escalation." Rael's drumming stopped, his hand flattening on the phone, eyes widening as he glanced between us. "Dad, chill," he muttered, but there was no real concern, just discomfort at the shift. Dad ignored him, pointing a finger at me now, the tip trembling slightly with restrained fury. "You're treating this like it's yours alone, but who raised you? Who kept a roof over your head when your mother bailed?" The mention of Mom sent a jolt through me, my back stiffening, shoulders tensing as old wounds flared. His finger jabbed the air for emphasis. 80% goes to Rael. End of discussion. You're the provider. Act like it. Provider. The word landed like a verdict, reducing me to a role, a resource to be tapped. My heart pounded, blood rushing in my ears, drowning out the clock. I stood then, slowly, my chair pushing back with a deliberate scrape, hands flat on the table for support, palms damp against the cloth. I'm not a bank, I said, voice steady despite the quake inside. That money is mine. I earned it. Every cent. The room went still, the only sound Rael's sharp intake of breath, his mouth opening then closing like a fish. Dad rose too, slower, his height towering as he loomed across the table, face a mask of disbelief turning to rage. You ungrateful. He stopped, rubbing his face with one hand, beard scratching audibly, then dropped it, eyes cold. If that's how you feel, then fine, keep your precious savings but don't expect to live off us anymore. Us. As if they contributed. His words escalated the stakes, a formal line drawn. You're on your own if you won't help family. We don't need a leech. Leech. The irony burned, my fists clenching at my sides now, nails biting deeper. Rael shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze, his foot resuming its tap under the table faster. You mean disowned? I asked, the word hanging heavy, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad didn't blink. Call it what you want, if you're not contributing you're out. Out. The announcement hit like a door slamming, final and echoing. My vision narrowed, the edges blurring as I stared at him, seeing not a father, but a user, his averted eyes from years past flashing in my mind. Rael mumbled something about talking sense, but it faded. Internally the breaking point crystallized, not shattered but solidified. This wasn't rejection, it was confirmation. I was expendable, a convenience until I said no. I nodded once, the motion jerky, turning toward the door without another word, my steps measured, though my legs felt like lead. Behind me, Dad's voice rose again. You walk out, don't come back begging. But I didn't look back, hand reaching for the knob, the metal cool under my palm. The knob turned under my hand, slick with the faint sweat of my palm, and I pulled the door open just enough for the night air to rush in, cool and sharp against my heated skin. Dad's words echoed behind me. Don't come back begging, his voice cracking with a mix of anger and something almost like desperation, but I didn't pause, my foot lifting to step over the threshold. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket, an insistent vibration that cut through the haze of adrenaline, making me freeze mid-stride. The screen lit up as I fished it out, my fingers fumbling slightly, nails catching on the fabric. An unknown number flashed. But the area code was familiar, old, from the town Mom had moved to after she left us 11 years ago. My thumb hovered over the decline button, heart skipping a beat, but curiosity, or maybe the raw timing, made me swipe to answer instead. I pressed the phone to my ear, stepping fully outside now, the door clicking shut behind me with a soft finality that muffled Dad's mutterings inside. Hello, I said, my voice quieter than intended, breath visible in the chill as I leaned against the porch railing again, the wood digging into my back. There was a pause on the line, static crackling faintly, then a voice I hadn't heard in years, trembling, hesitant. Kayla? It's Mom. The word Mom hit like a punch to the gut, my free hand gripping the railing tighter, knuckles paling under the porch light. I hadn't spoken to her since that awkward call on my 18th birthday, when she'd promised to visit and never showed. Now here she was, her tone laced with a plea that set my teeth on edge. I know it's been a long time, too long, but I've been thinking about you, about us. Us. The word hung there and I felt my jaw clench, teeth grinding subtly as memories flooded in. Her packing bags in the dead of night, Dad's shouts, Rael's tears, and me, 15 and numb, watching from the hallway shadows. I didn't respond right away, my eyes fixed on the dark yard, the grass swaying faintly in the breeze. Inside I could hear muffled voices, Dad and Rael probably dissecting my betrayal, but they felt distant now, secondary to this unexpected intrusion. What do you want? I finally asked, voice flat, though my heart raced, a mix of old hurt and fresh wariness churning in my chest. She sighed, a shaky sound that carried over the line, and I pictured her, maybe sitting in some dimly lit apartment, fingers twisting a cord or whatever people did when nervous. I want to make things right, Kayla. I've changed. Therapy, church. I see now how I hurt you all, especially you. You were always the strong one, holding it together. Strong one. It echoed Dad's earlier compliments, and I felt a bitter laugh bubble up, but I swallowed it, my throat tight. My foot shifted on the porch boards, toes scuffing a loose nail at the small pane, a distraction. Please, she continued, her voice gaining urgency, words tumbling faster now. Let me come back. Talk to your dad. Tell him I'm sorry. We can be a family again. Rael needs a mother, and you've carried so much. I can help lift that. Lift that. As if she knew the weight, the endless shifts, the hidden savings, the invisibility. I paced a small circle on the porch, phone pressed harder to my ear, the cool metal warming against my skin. You left. I said simply, stopping to lean on the post again, my free hand rubbing my arm against the goosebumps rising. You walked out and never looked back, calls here and there, sure, but nothing real. There was a hitch in her breath, almost a sob, and guilt flickered in me, unwanted, familiar. But I pushed it down, fingers flexing on the post, splinter catching my skin. I know, baby, I was messed up. Depression, the fighting with your dad, but I'm better now. I have a job, a place, we could start over. Please, just plead my case to them, for me. Plead. The word twisted, mirroring the family dynamic I just escaped inside. I closed my eyes, head tilting back against the post, the stars blurring above. Micro moments of our past flashed, her hugging me goodbye, promising it'd be temporary, the empty chair at holidays, the way Dad's neglect deepened without her buffer. But also her absence had forced me into the role, the provider, the invisible glue. Why now? I asked, opening my eyes, voice sharper. After all this time? Silence stretched, then she whispered, I heard from a friend about Rael's troubles, your dad's health scare last year. I can't stay away anymore. Family's everything, Kayla. Family's everything. The phrase landed heavy, reinforcing the hypocrisy I just faced indoors. My breath came quicker, chest rising and falling as I straightened, hand dropping from the post to my side, fist clenching loosely. Family, I echoed, edge creeping in. You mean the one where I'm expected to give everything and get nothing? Where Dad demands my savings for Rael and you're suddenly ready to waltz back? She gasped softly, the sound tinny over the phone. Savings? Oh honey, that's not right. But see, I can help fix that. Talk to them. Bring me in. We'll sort it. Sort it. As if reconciliation was a bandage for years of neglect. I felt tears prick my eyes, hot and angry, and I blinked them back, wiping my cheek with the back of my hand, the skin rough. No, I said, firmer now, the words solidifying like concrete in my core. You don't get to plea for reconciliation and expect me to mediate. I've been the fixer long enough. Her voice rose, desperate, pleading faster. Kayla, wait, don't hang up. I love you, we can heal this, just give me a chance. Love. It rang hollow, and I felt my resolve lock in, a quiet click inside, drowning her words. My thumb moved toward the end call button, hesitating for a split second as she continued, Please, baby, for old time's sake. But I pressed it, the screen going dark, the silence rushing back profound and freeing. I stood there, phone slipping into my pocket, hands trembling slightly as I hugged myself against the cold. The call hadn't changed everything in revelation. It had solidified what I already knew. I was done being the bridge, the pleader, the sacrificed. Cutting ties wasn't just with them inside, it was with her too, the final thread snapping under this desperate plea. The house light flickered behind me, but I turned away, steps leading me down the porch stairs, each one lighter toward the street, and whatever came next. My foot hit the cracked sidewalk at the bottom of the porch stairs, the impact jarring through my sneaker sole, grounding me in the moment as I pocketed my phone, the screen still warm from the call. The street lamp flickered on overhead, casting a yellowish glow that stretched my shadow long and thin across the pavement, like a figure finally stretching free. Behind me, the house door burst open with a bang, the frame rattling as Dad's voice boomed out, Kayla! Get back here! We're not done! His words carried that gruff command he'd always used, but there was a new edge, a crack of uncertainty that made me pause mid-step, my weight shifting to my back foot. I turned slowly, hands slipping into my pockets to hide their slight tremble, fingers curling around loose change, a nickel, a few pennies, from my last shift. Dad stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the kitchen light, his shoulders heaving with quick breaths, beard disheveled as if he'd run a hand through it, roughly. Rael hovered behind him, peeking over Dad's shoulder, his face a mix of confusion and annoyance, phone clutched in one hand like a lifeline. Dad descended the stairs first, his boots thudding heavily on each step, the wood groaning under his weight. He stopped a few feet away, arms crossing tightly over his chest, the fabric of his shirt bunching at the elbows. What the hell was that? You can't just walk out mid-conversation? Conversation. As if it had been anything but a dictation. I met his eyes, holding steady, though my heart thudded against my ribs, a steady drum that echoed the adrenaline still coursing from Mom's plea. Rael shuffled down next, sneakers scuffing the stairs, avoiding my gaze as he leaned against the railing, one foot kicking at a loose pebble that skittered into the grass. "Yeah, sis, come on, let's talk this out. You know Dad didn't mean it like that." His voice was softer, coaxing, but his eyes darted to Dad for approval, lips pressing into a thin line when he finally looked at me. I didn't move closer, keeping the distance like a boundary already drawn. Didn't mean what? That I'm just the wallet here? Or that if I don't hand over what I've earned, I'm out? My voice came out calm, quieter than the anger bubbling inside, but each word landed deliberate, like stones dropped into still water. Dad's face flushed deeper, his fists clenching at his sides, knuckles whitening briefly before he forced them open, palms facing me in a placating gesture. Look, I was heated. We all were. Come back in, we'll figure a smaller amount, 50%. That's fair, right? Scramble. There it was, the stunned backpedal, his eyes widening slightly as if realizing for the first time I might actually go. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, boots scraping the concrete, a micro tell of discomfort I'd seen before when bills piled up and he had to ask me for help. Rael jumped in, nodding vigorously, his hand gesturing vaguely toward the house, fingers splayed. Totally, or even less, just, don't blow this up, we're family. Family. The word twisted again, fresh from Mom's use, and I felt a quiet laugh escape me, short, bitter, my breath fogging in the cooling air. Dad's brow furrowed, confusion mixing with his irritation, and he took a half step forward, hand reaching out but dropping when I didn't budge. "What's so funny? This ain't a joke, Kayla. You've always been there for us. Don't turn your back now." Always been there. The hypocrisy burned, and I straightened my shoulders, pulling my hands from my pockets, letting them hang loose at my sides, fingers flexing to release the tension. "Turn my back?" I echoed, voice steady, eyes locking on Dad's. "Like you turned yours every time I needed something? Remember when I wanted to go back to school last year? I asked for help with tuition, just a cosign on a loan. You said no, it's too risky. But for Rael's business, suddenly my money's fair game." Dad's mouth opened, then closed, his beard twitching as he averted his gaze to the ground, toe nudging a crack in the sidewalk. Rael shifted uncomfortably, his phone screen lighting up in his hand. A notification, probably, but he silenced it quickly, thumb pressing hard, eyes flicking away. "That's different," Dad muttered, rubbing the back of his neck, skin rasping against his collar. "You were fine without school. Rael needs a push." Needs. I stepped forward now, just one measured pace, closing the gap enough to make them both tense. Dad's arms uncrossing, Rael straightening off the railing. "Different how?" I pressed, calmly exposing the layers I'd buried for years. "Because I'm the responsible one? The one who dropped everything at 15 when Mom left? I cooked, cleaned, worked, paid the rent when you couldn't. And what did I get? Ignored graduations, forgotten birthdays, my efforts called expected." My words flowed even, but inside emotions sequenced raw, hurt first, then anger, logical and building. Dad's face paled slightly under the lamp, his hands balling again but looser, defeat creeping in. We appreciated it. Just didn't say it much." "Appreciated," Rael chimed in weakly. "Yeah, we did. Come on, let's go inside. It's cold." His voice whined a bit, foot tapping nervously, but I ignored him, focusing on Dad. "And you?" I turned to Rael, my gaze making him flinch, shoulders hunching. "Entitled to everything, the bike I bought that you never used, the loans I covered that you blew. You smirk when I say no like it's a game, but it's my life you've been living off." Rael's cheeks reddened, his grip tightening on his phone, knuckles white, eyes dropping to his shoes. "Not fair," he mumbled. But there was no fire, just a scramble to deflect. Dad interjected, voice rising. "Enough. We're sorry, okay? Come back, we'll talk real, sorry." The word hung false, his eyes pleading now, hands gesturing open-palmed again, a desperate shift from command to beg. I shook my head, the motion final, my hair brushing my shoulders. "Too late. You've treated me like a convenience, not family. Mom just called, pleading to come back, wanting me to fix that too. But I'm done fixing." Dad's eyes widened, stunned silence falling, his mouth slackening as Rael gasped softly. "Mom?" The revelation hit them, scrambling their expressions. Dad's hand rising to his face, rubbing his eyes hard, fingers pressing into sockets. "She? What? And you? He trailed off, the hypocrisy laid bare, years of neglect, now exposed in their pleas. I turned then, back to the street, steps purposeful, sneakers soft on pavement. Goodbye, I said over my shoulder, voice carrying quiet power, no yell, just resolve. Behind me Dad called, Kayla, wait, voice cracking, but I didn't stop, the distance growing, their figures shrinking under the light. The exit felt powerful, not dramatic, a door closing on unreciprocated weight. The street stretched out before me, dimly lit by sporadic lamps that buzzed faintly overhead, their light pooling in uneven circles on the pavement. My steps echoed softly, sneakers padding against the concrete as I walked away from the house, the shouts from Dad fading into the night like distant thunder. My hands were still balled loosely at my sides, fingers uncurling slowly as the adrenaline ebbed, leaving a hollow ache in my chest. But beneath it, a quiet lightness bloomed, the weight of obligation lifting with each stride. I didn't have a plan, not really, just the keys in my pocket, my old beat-up car parked a block down where I'd left it after work. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain on the horizon, and I hugged my arms around myself, rubbing my shoulders against the chill. Freedom felt raw, uncharted, but for the first time it was mine. I drove aimlessly at first, the engine humming steadily as I gripped the wheel, knuckles whitening then relaxing in waves. Streetlights blurred past, and my mind replayed the evening, the demands, the plea from Mom, the stunned faces as I walked. But instead of dwelling, I found myself turning toward the one place that had always felt like a soft landing. My friend Lena's apartment. Lena, with her wild curls and infectious laugh, had been my coworker at the diner for years, the one who noticed when I was fading and slipped me extra coffee. We'd bonded over late-night shifts, sharing stories of family messes, hers absent, mine suffocating. And then there was Marco, her roommate, quiet but kind, always ready with a listening ear or a bad joke to break the tension. They weren't blood, but they'd chosen me, time and again without strings. I pulled up to their building around 9 p.m., the brick facade glowing under a single bulb by the door. My phone had buzzed a few times, text from Rael, probably guilt-tripping, but I silenced it, screen down on the passenger seat. Climbing the stairs, each step creaking underfoot, I knocked softly, knuckles rapping against the peeling paint. The door opened almost immediately, Lena's face appearing, her eyes widening in surprise before softening with concern. Kayla? Hey, come in, what's wrong? She stepped aside, her hand reaching out to touch my arm lightly, fingers warm and reassuring. I managed a small smile, stepping inside, the familiar scent of jasmine incense and fresh-baked cookies wrapping around me like a hug. Marco looked up from the couch, remote in hand, pausing whatever show was on the TV, his glasses slipping down his nose as he pushed them up with a finger. The living room was cozy, cluttered in the best way, blankets draped over the sofa, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, string lights twinkling along the walls. I sank into the armchair by the window, the cushions yielding under me, and let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Lena closed the door with a gentle click, locking it before perching on the arm of the couch, her legs swinging slightly. Spill, she said softly, no pressure, just open invitation. Marco set the remote down with a soft thud, leaning forward, elbows on knees, his hands clasping together, fingers interlacing thoughtfully. I started talking then, words tumbling out slow at first, then faster, the dinner, Dad's demand for my savings, Rael's smirk, Mom's call out of nowhere. My voice cracked once, on expendable, and I paused, swallowing hard, my throat tight. Lena's hand found mine, squeezing gently, her thumb rubbing small circles on my knuckles, a micro-gesture that grounded me. As I spoke, their reactions wove in seamlessly, a contrast so stark to the cold dismissal at home it almost hurt. Lena's eyes narrowed in quiet anger when I mentioned the 80%, her free hand clenching into a fist on her lap, nails digging into her palm before she released it with a sigh. That's bullshit, Kayla, you've given them everything. No judgment, just solidarity, her voice warm like the tea she stood to make midway through, the kettle whistling softly as she poured steaming water over bags in mismatched mugs. Marco nodded along, his brow furrowing behind his glasses, adjusting them again with a quick push. Sounds like they've been taking advantage for too long, he said evenly. No drama, just fact, his fingers tapping lightly on his knee in thought. He reached for a cookie from the plate on the table, offering it to me with a small smile, the chocolate chips still gooey, crumbling slightly in my hand as I took it. The gathering shifted naturally, not forced, as I finished the story, my words trailing off with the walk away. Lena handed me the mug, steam curling up, her fingers brushing mine in passing. "You're staying here tonight," she declared, not a question, settling back with her own cup, blowing gently on the surface, ripples forming. Marco hummed agreement, standing to grab a blanket from the closet, unfolding it with a soft snap before draping it over my legs. The fabric warm from the dryer. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the TV muted now, the puzzle pieces glinting under the lights. Then Lena leaned in, her curls bouncing slightly. "You know, we're proud of you. That savings, that's huge. You've built something real." Proud. The word landed soft, genuine, and I felt tears well up, hot and sudden, blinking them back as I sipped the tea, the herbal warmth spreading through me. Marco picked up a puzzle piece, turning it in his fingers, the cardboard edge worn. "Remember when you helped me with my resume last month? You didn't have to, but you did. That's who you are, giving, but now it's time to give to yourself." His voice was steady, eyes meeting mine with quiet intensity, no avoidance. Lena nodded, setting her mug down with a gentle clink, reaching for another piece, fitting it into place with a satisfying click. "Exactly, and hey, celebrate the win, you walked away, that's freedom." "Freedom?" I nodded, a real smile breaking through, my fingers tracing the mug's rim, the ceramic smooth and grounding. We talked more then, lighter topics weaving in. Lena's latest date disaster, Marco's new recipe attempt that ended in smoke alarms, but always circling back to support, their words like anchors. As the night deepened, the contrast sharpened in my mind, the toxic dinner's contempt versus this warmth. No demands, just presence. Lena's laugh when I joked about starting over, her hand slapping her knee lightly. Marco's thoughtful pauses, his head tilting as he listened, glasses catching the light. I felt seen not as a provider, but as me, Kayla, with dreams and hurts. By midnight, yawns interrupting, they insisted on the couch for me, pillows fluffed with pats, blanket tucked. Lying there, the room dark save for the string light's glow, peace settled deep. These allies chosen had given me what blood never did. Genuine care unreciprocated no more. The morning light filtered through Lena's thin curtains, casting a soft mottled glow across the living room floor, where puzzle pieces from last night still lay scattered on the coffee table like forgotten confetti. I stirred on the couch, the blanket tangled around my legs from a restless sleep, my hand reaching instinctively for my phone on the side table. The screen lit up as I unlocked it, notifications piling in, texts from Dad, missed calls from Rael, even a voicemail icon blinking insistently. My thumb hovered over the first message, heart rate picking up slightly, a familiar knot forming in my stomach. But this was the aftermath, the raw edge of the break I'd made, and I knew handling it meant building walls, not bridges. I sat up slowly, the couch springs creaking under me, rubbing my eyes with the heel of my hand, the skin still puffy from yesterday's emotions. Lena's apartment smelled of fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen, a comforting hum from the machine pulling me further awake. I opened the texts first, starting with Dad's. "Come home, we need to talk." Short, commanding, no apology. Then Rael's. "Sis, that was intense. Dad's pissed, but he'll cool off, just say sorry." Sorry. The word made me scoff softly, my lips pressing into a thin line as I set the phone down for a moment, fingers drumming lightly on the armrest, nails tapping a irregular rhythm. Lena emerged from the kitchen then, 2 mugs in hand, steam curling up lazily. She handed me one, her fingers brushing mine briefly, warm and steady. "Morning, you okay?" she asked, settling on the floor cross-legged, back against the couch, her curls still sleep-tasseled. I nodded, taking a sip, the bitter heat grounding me as I picked up the phone again. "Just dealing with the fallout." Marco shuffled in from his room, yawning, glasses already on, adjusting them with a quick push as he grabbed his own coffee from the counter. The voicemail was next, Dad's voice gruff and halting. "Kayla, this is ridiculous. Pick up. We can't just end like this." End. It was him framing it, not me. I deleted it mid-sentence, my thumb pressing firmly on the screen, the action sending a small jolt of empowerment through me. But more texts buzzed in real time. Rael again. "Mom called Dad last night after you hung up. She's freaking out, said you were cold. Come fix this." Fix this. My jaw tightened, teeth clenching subtly as I read, the phone's edges digging into my palm. Lena glanced over, her mug pausing at her lips. Ignore them, she suggested gently, but I shook my head, straightening my back against the cushions. No, I need to set boundaries. Clear ones. Marco nodded from the armchair, stirring his coffee with a spoon, the metal tinkling softly. Smart, block if you have to, but say your piece first. I typed slowly at first, words forming deliberate. I'm not coming back. I need space. Don't contact me unless it's an emergency, and no, money or mom isn't one. My fingers hesitated over send, nail tracing the button, but I pressed it, the whoosh sound final. Almost immediately replies flooded. Dad? Space? After all we've done? I felt my shoulders tense, muscles knotting, but I breathed deep, setting the phone face down on the table with a soft thud. Rael, that's harsh. We're family. Family. The guilt trip hit, familiar and sharp, making my hand twitch toward the phone again, but I resisted, folding my arms instead, elbows digging into my sides. Lena reached up, patting my knee lightly, her touch light but reassuring. You're doing good, they'll push, but hold firm. The phone rang then, Dad's number flashing. I stared at it, the vibration buzzing against the wood, each pulse like a demand. My heart pounded, breath shallow, but I let it ring, fingers curling into my palms, nails biting skin. Voicemail again. This time I listened. Kayla, pick up. This isn't you. You're better than this pettiness. Pettiness. The accusation stung, heat rising in my cheeks, but I deleted it too, thumb swiping hard. Another text from Rael. Dad's upset. Heart acting up. Your fault? Manipulation. I recognized it now, the twist of worry into weapon. My free hand rubbed my forehead, fingers pressing into temples, easing the building pressure. They're guilt-tripping, I murmured, voice low. Marco set his mug down with a clink, leaning forward. Classic. Respond once more, then block. Lena nodded, her hand squeezing my knee again before withdrawing, fingers flexing open. I crafted the message carefully. Stop the guilt. My decision stands. No more contact. Respect that or I'll block you. Send. The silence after felt heavy but liberating. Dad's reply came quick. Block us? After raising you? Raising, as if. I blocked him mid-read, finger tapping the option firmly, the screen confirming with a pop-up. Relief washed over me, shoulders dropping, breath evening out. Rael next, his texts pleading. Sis, please, I need you. Need. Always need. Block. The action was swift, my thumb decisive, no hesitation now. The phone went quiet. The absence of buzzes like a vacuum, but one I welcomed. I leaned back, mug in both hands now, fingers wrapping around the warmth, tracing the ceramic curve. But the aftermath wasn't just digital. Doubt crept in, internal waves crashing. What if they really needed help? My mind flashed to Dad's tired eyes, Rael's lost grin, micro-memories that tugged. I shifted on the couch, legs drawing up, knees hugging to chest, toes curling into the blanket. Lena noticed, her head tilting. Second thoughts? I shook my head, but admitted softly. Guilt's loud. Marco stood, pacing a small circle, hands in pockets, jingling keys faintly. Normal, but remember why. Write it down. Your rules. Rules of engagement. I nodded, grabbing a notepad from the table, pen clicking open. I wrote, no responses to manipulation, emergencies only through third party, my piece first. The pen scratched paper, ink flowing steady, each word a brick in my fortress. As I wrote, they offered input. Lena suggesting, add self-care. Therapy maybe, her finger pointing gently at the page. Marco, and boundaries with Mom too. Mom, I'd forgotten. Her number still unblocked. A text from her arrived then. Kayla honey, let's talk, I miss you. Miss, my stomach twisted, hand gripping the pen tighter, knuckles paling. I replied, no, respect my space. Block, the finality settled, phone set aside again, screen dark. We talked more, we set the conversation weaving support. Lena sharing her own cut-off story, voice soft, eyes distant as she recalled. Marco listening, nodding, his foot tapping thoughtfully. Micro-actions built the moment, my nods, their leans in, the shared sips of cooling coffee. By noon the fortress felt solid, boundaries established not just with them but within me. Ignoring the phantom buzzes in my mind, I stood, stretching, arms overhead, vertebrae popping softly. Peace wasn't instant. But handling this aftermath, one block, one rule at a time, made it real. Lena hugged me quick, arms tight, then released with a pat. Proud, she whispered, and for once it stuck. Lena's hug lingered in my mind as I stepped out of her apartment later that afternoon, the door clicking shut behind me with a soft finality that echoed the blocks I'd placed on my phone. The sun hung high, warming the sidewalk as I walked to my car, keys jingling in my hand, each metallic clink a reminder of the small freedoms I'd claimed. My savings, that hard-won 30,000, sat untouched in the account, a digital fortress I'd built brick by painstaking brick. Now, with the family ties severed, it wasn't just money, it was potential, a tool to reclaim what they'd diminished. My sense of self, my legacy. Not their name, Preston, tainted by neglect and entitlement, but mine, Kayla's, forged in quiet resilience. I slid into the driver's seat, the vinyl warm under me, and gripped the wheel, fingers tracing the worn grooves as I started the engine. Today I'd start investing it wisely, not in stocks or schemes, but in growth. Personal, meaningful, a positive ripple that honored my efforts without their shadow. The first stop was the community center downtown, a squat brick building I'd passed 100 times on diner shifts but never entered. It offered adult education classes, affordable, practical ones like financial literacy and creative writing, things I'd dreamed of but sidelined for bills. I parked in the lot, gravel crunching under tires, and stepped out, smoothing my shirt with damp palms, the fabric bunching slightly under my fingers. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and old books, a bulletin board fluttering with flyers as a fan whirred overhead. A woman at the front desk, mid-40s, with kind eyes and a name tag reading Ms. Rivera, looked up from her computer, fingers pausing on the keys. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice warm, no rush. I approached, sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, and set my hands on the counter, nails tapping lightly as I gathered words. "I'm interested in classes," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "Something for personal development, maybe writing or budgeting." She nodded, pulling a brochure from a stack, the paper crinkling as she slid it over. Her eyes crinkled at the corners. "We've got a great creative writing workshop starting next week, and financial planning is ongoing. First session's free to try." Free. The word eased the knot in my chest, and I flipped through the brochure, pages whispering under my thumb, descriptions jumping out. Empower yourself through storytelling. Build wealth on your terms. My terms. I signed up on the spot, pen scratching against the form, ink flowing in loops that felt like declarations. As I handed it back, Ms. Rivera smiled wider, her hand patting the counter lightly. "Good for you. See you soon." I nodded, a small smile breaking through, my shoulders relaxing as I turned to leave, brochure clutched like a talisman. Back in the car, the engine idling with a low hum, I checked my banking app. Balance unchanged, but now with purpose. Next investment, causes that mattered, echoes of the invisibility I'd fought. I'd always volunteered sporadically at the local shelter, serving meals on off days, but now, with freedom, I could do more. I drove there next, the route familiar, traffic light as I navigated side streets. The shelter was a converted warehouse, doors propped open, voices spilling out. I parked and walked in, the scent of simmering soup hitting me, warm and inviting. Volunteers bustled, stirring pots, stacking plates, and I spotted the coordinator, Jamal, a tall man with a gentle demeanor, wiping his hands on an apron. "Kayla, been a while," he said, extending a hand, his grip firm but kind, calluses rough against my palm. "Yeah, life got complicated," I replied, releasing his hand, fingers flexing open. "But I'm here to help more regularly, and maybe donate." Donate. The word felt powerful, my choice, not obligation. Jamal's eyebrows rose slightly, a micro-surprise flickering before he nodded, gesturing to a quiet corner table away from the clatter. We sat, chairs scraping wood, and he leaned forward, elbows on the surface, hands clasping loosely. "That's generous. We're always needing funds for the kids program, books, tutoring." Kids, like the younger me, holding things together. I pulled out my phone, app open, and transferred $500, fingers tapping the amount, thumb confirming with a press, the whoosh sound satisfying. "Done," I said, showing him the confirmation, screen glowing. His eyes widened, genuine thanks lighting his face as he rubbed his chin, beard scratching faintly. "Wow, this'll buy supplies for months, thank you." No demands, just impact. I stayed to help serve, ladling soup into bowls, steam rising to fog my vision briefly, hands steady on the spoon. As the afternoon wore on, the realization deepened, internal and profound, layering like sediment into something solid. This was reclaiming, using my success, that hidden savings, to create good without the Preston baggage. Back home, Lena's for now. I sat at the small desk in the guest nook, laptop open, screen illuminating my face in blue light. I researched more. Online courses in graphic design, a passion I'd buried since high school, sketches and notebooks now gathering dust. Fingers flew over keys, clicking enroll, the $200 fee deducted seamlessly. Then a bigger step, searching for a therapist, someone to unpack the years of neglect. I booked an appointment, calendar ping confirming, my breath hitching slightly at the commitment, hand hovering over the mouse before clicking away. Evening fell, and I journaled it all, pen gliding over paper in a notebook Lena lent, ink smudging slightly under my palm as I wrote furiously. Today, I invested in me, in others who need it not because they demand but because I choose. The words flowed, emotions raw, pride swelling, a quiet tear tracing my cheek, wiped away with a knuckle. This legacy was mine. Kayla Preston, builder of bridges for herself and strangers, not a convenience for blood. Micro moments piled, the brochures crinkle in my bag, the soup's warmth on my skin, the app's balance dipping but my spirit rising. No family name to honor, I'd redefine it on my terms, positive impacts rippling out, honoring the girl who'd saved in secret. By night, lying on the couch again, blanket pulled to chin, toes curling under, the internal shift felt complete. Not revenge, but reclamation. My efforts, once unreciprocated, now seeded growth, a legacy blooming independently, free. The blanket's soft weave brushed against my chin as I lay there on Lena's couch, the string lights above casting a gentle, twinkling haze that danced across the ceiling like distant stars. My eyes traced the patterns, following one light to the next, each blink slow and deliberate, as if savoring the quiet that had settled over the room. The apartment was still now, Lena and Marco having retreated to their beds hours ago. Their doors closed with soft clicks that echoed the finality of my day's choices. My phone sat silent on the coffee table, screen dark and undisturbed. No more buzzes, no pleas filtering through the blocks I'd set. In that hush, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen, my mind began to wander, not in frantic loops like before, but in a meandering reflection, pulling threads from the past and weaving them into something new, something wholly mine. I shifted slightly, the couch cushions yielding under my weight, a small sigh escaping my lips as I pulled the blanket higher, tucking it under my arms, fingers lingering on the frayed edge. It started with a single thought, worth. What was it, really? For so long I'd measured it by what I gave, the meals cooked, the bills paid, the savings handed over in silent sacrifice. My hand moved to my chest, palm pressing flat against my heartbeat, feeling the steady thump-thump that had carried me through endless shifts, through nights of doubt when guilt whispered I wasn't enough. But here, in this borrowed space, with the weight of obligation lifted, I felt it shift. Worth wasn't in their approval, in Dad's gruff nods or Rael's fleeting thanks. It was internal, a quiet flame I'd tended in secret, flickering brighter now without their shadows to dim it. Memories surfaced gently, not crashing like waves but lapping at the edges of my consciousness. I remembered the first deposit into that hidden account, $200, transferred in the diner's break room, my fingers trembling on the phone screen, thumb hesitating before pressing confirm. The rush then had been fear mixed with defiance, but looking back, it was the seed of this peace. My eyes closed, lashes brushing my cheeks, and I breathed deep, inhaling the faint jasmine from Lena's incense, the scent grounding me. Each subsequent save, skipping lunches, my stomach growling through afternoon rushes, patching clothes instead of buying new, needle pricking my thumb as I sewed late into the night, had built not just money, but resilience. A self-worth forged in solitude, untainted by their demands. The realization deepened as I turned on my side, pillow crinkling under my head, my arm curling beneath it for support. It wasn't about revenge or proving them wrong. It was about validating the girl who'd cried alone after Mom left, who'd shouldered the load without fanfare. My free hand traced idle circles on the blanket, fingertip following the weave, each loop a metaphor for the cycles I'd broken. Peace came in waves now. First, acceptance of the hurt, a soft ache in my chest that I acknowledged without pushing away, letting it sit like an old friend finally heard. Then, gratitude for the strength it birthed, my lips curving into a small private smile, the muscles in my face relaxing fully for what felt like the first time in years. But true self-validation bloomed in the quiet affirmation. I was enough, just as I was. Not the provider, not the fixer, but Kayla, with dreams of writing stories that mirrored my own, of helping at the shelter not out of duty but joy, of building a life where peace wasn't earned through sacrifice but embraced as a right. Tears welled then, warm and unbidden, tracing slow paths down my temples to soak into the pillowcase, but they weren't sad, they were release, each drop lightening the load I'd carried. My breath evened, chest rising and falling in rhythm with the night's calm, fingers stilling on the blanket as exhaustion tugged gently. In that moment of reflection, lying there with the world hushed around me, I understood it fully. My worth was internal, a constant glow that no neglect could extinguish. It brought a profound peace, settling deep in my bones, like coming home to myself after a long, weary journey. No more chasing validation from echoes. I had it here, in the quiet resolve of my own heart. Sleep came softly then, my eyelids heavy, the last conscious thought a whisper of contentment. Finally, free. Have you ever felt like you were pouring everything into relationships that gave nothing back, only to realize your true value was waiting inside you all along? If this story hit home, drop your own experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you've reclaimed your peace and broken free from unreciprocated obligations. Sharing our journeys can inspire someone else who's still carrying that weight. If Kayla's path from invisible provider to self-empowered woman resonated with you, please like this video to show support, subscribe for more real-life stories of triumph and transformation, and share it with a friend who might need the reminder that it's okay, even necessary, to put yourself first. Your engagement helps spread these empowering messages further. Remember, true peace isn't found in fixing others. It's in validating your own worth. You deserve a life that's fully yours. Go claim it.